also viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Corporate Resources and Infrastructure Select Committee. My name is Councillor John Riley and I am the chair of this meeting. A key role of this committee is to monitor the performance of local public services within its remit and to hold in-depth reviews on topics of resident interest. We engage with a range of external witnesses in our activity, which can include community groups, residents, and subject matter experts. Where we identify areas for change or improvement, we make recommendations to the decision-making cabinet. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. Please note that members of the committee will be using tablets or laptops to view the agenda today. We're not expecting any fire drills, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits out of the building and to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts. For those watching via YouTube, if you are so minded, you can complete one of our resident feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way we run our meetings. Now we run on to the attendees of this meeting, so if everyone could introduce themselves for the record, starting with my colleague on my right.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adam Bennett.
Councillor Kaushik Banerjee.
Councillor Peter Smallwood. Matthew Walbridge, Chief Operating Officer.
Steve Muldoon, Corporate Director of Finance.
Matt Davis, Director of Strategic and Operational Finance.
Chris Malin, Head of Finance for Corporate Services and Finance.
Dan Kennedy, Corporate Director of Resident Services.
Michael Norton, Head of Capital Programme.
Charlie Cullimore, Appeals, Complaints and Policy Team Leader effectively from the Council Tax Team today.
Councillor Islam.
Councillor Situl Punja.
Councillor Gasharan Mand.
Anisha Tedji, Democratic Services.
So we'll go on to apologies for absence, please.
Apologies from Councillor Troubadour with Councillor Smallwood substituting. Apologies also from Councillor Gog with Councillor Punja substituting.
All right, thank you. Both councillors substituting are very welcome to this meeting. Councillor Smallwood.
Chair, just apologies for being in trainers and a jumper. I was asked to substitute because Councillor Troubadour is not well. I thought I'd spend the 3 hours reading the papers so that I could contribute to this committee rather than going home to have a shower and get dressed up smart. So just my apologies for my appearance.
All right, thank you very much. No need to apologise because you have stepped in later in the day, but very nice jumper, by the way. All right, thank you. Declarations of interest in any matters coming before the committee? Usual ones, I expect, but anything special? Thank you. To confirm that the items of business marked in Part 1 will be considered in public and that the items marked in Part 2, which I don't think we've got any, will be considered in private. All right. So, minutes of the previous meeting, which everybody should have had by now, got through a great deal, as we can see from the minutes that we've got. But for those who were present, anyone want to raise anything about the minutes on the last occasion? No? Agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got quite a bit to get through this evening, so what I would say to officers is that, as I've said in the past about reports and so forth, but if you can give us the highlights and then we'll work through the questions that we have and any issues in the report. So we start with item 5, which is the annual performance monitoring report. Who's going to talk to that one? All right, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair.
So you have in front of you the Council's annual performance report for the year 24-25. So this is the first time for a while you've seen an annual performance report within the Council. So what it does is it draws the key indicators that we use to monitor and manage the Council's corporate strategy and the Council strategy, and it has a suite of indicators that, really importantly, in terms of our governance as an organisation, having been part of Audit Committee last night, is we've got a robust framework for managing our performance across the organisation. I said robust, is that in terms of all the indicators, they are managed both at a service level, then to directorate leadership teams, then to corporate management team, then to the cabinet, and then onwards to select committees, and it will go back to full council. So that's significant scrutiny across our performance in terms of how we're managing this organisation. Also, just lastly, is what the report also picks up is a number of the newly proposed local government outcomes framework measures, which are out for consultation with the government at the moment, which has 15 priority outcomes as well as 150 measures, most of which are statutory, most of which exist already, but we're making sure we're ahead of the game and picking those up in the framework that we've got. I don't intend to go through the detail of the report. There's a lot of information in there, a lot of indicators, but quite happy to answer any questions with myself and my colleagues on those.
All right, thank you. So it's good to note that across a lot of these areas, and having gone through the various subject heads in regard to the report, that there's a lot of positives in there. Picking up in particular, one of the things that we've looked at in the past is the work of the counter fraud team, who are mentioned a number of times in the report, and the way in which they've exceeded expectation, and by just over 2 million, it looks like, from looking at, in particular, paragraph 8 on page 7 and other areas within the report. They seem to go from strength to strength, really. And we did talk previously about the extent to which they were able to be used in terms of other councils, maybe, in terms of relating to their issues. Has that been explored at all?
Yes, Chair. So we've explored that, and we don't feel it's right for us as an organisation to almost trade services. We really want to focus on what we want to deliver within this borough, and also expand the remit of the team to, we're working quite a lot on looking at the reduction of debt, making sure that we're collecting money that's owed to us, as well as looking at counter fraud at the same time. So the team are exceptional, they perform very well, but also we don't rest on our laurels, and we look to see what we can drive forward in terms of debt collection as the next step, rather than looking at trading services.
All right, thank you. Dan, in your piece on, it's difficult to tell really in terms of the page number, but just dealing with the issue about housing repairs and maintenance of the council stock, you say that the last year completed over 3,000 repairs across all council-owned dwellings. What I was interested in was the extent to which our tenants, residents who are in council property, find it easy to get hold of the council in terms of getting repairs and maintenance done.
So we've actually made a number of improvements over a few years now, with working with Matthew's team to introduce very much modern technology to allow tenants to log a repair, and also to track when the repair operative is actually going to be at their home. That we have undertake every single year a survey of our tenants across a whole range of different measures, including the repair service, which generally, in general terms, shows very good satisfaction rates, above average satisfaction rates compared to other social housing landlords. We have had some feedback that for those who do wish to speak to somebody, it's not always as easy or as timely as they would like. So we are holding a number of tenant sort of interest group meetings to explore that a bit further, and it may be, and to encourage really digital an uptake in digital skills and uptake in digital ways of engaging with us. But it isn't right for everybody, and we acknowledge that. So we are working with tenants to see what more we can do to increase access to the services where that's needed.
Previously, we've done a pretty big review in terms of procurement, and one of the areas that we looked at was the ease of framework agreements and so forth, which in terms of the sort of services that we can offer in terms of reporting of maintenance and upkeep, has that had a reasonable effect as far as our residents are concerned?
In terms of the repairs operatives that we engage with, our approach is to have always to engage with. We've got a number of in-house managed services, but where we do engage with external companies, we intend to have a more mixed approach rather than engage in appointing, say, one big provider to do everything. We tend to find that gives a lot more resilience. So if there's work pressures with one particular company, then we can move across different companies with workload. So we found that for us in Hillingdon works best for our tenants.
All right, thank you. And going through the paper, highways again comes out reasonably well. I want to go back to electric vehicle charging in a moment, but highways comes out pretty well, and as does the repair of potholes, and something that we all know is a fairly constant report as far as residents are concerned. Seem to do dealing pretty well with that, and similarly, as I say, in terms of highways, who can down again. That's been a fairly consistent and well dealt with issue. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, we've I'm sure the committee know, but we've been active as a local authority, investing heavily in our roads to really provide very good quality condition of our roads and pavements. Strong capital programme, and it continues to be. And what these graphs show very clearly to me is that the quality of our roads is very good compared to most other London boroughs and those in our benchmark group. And so, for example, if I look at where are classified roads, so it's highways, percentage of B and C classified roads, you can see, for example, that the percentage of roads in Hillingdon that should be considered for some sort of repair work is very low compared to other boroughs, and I won't name them, but they are on the graph publicly. And that's because we invest heavily in surveying our roads and improving our roads through our capital programme, and so therefore it's a measure really of how well we look after our roads and our residents.
And of course now we get it. I mean, today there was snow in Hertfordshire, so we're getting to a time when the roads do tend to suffer quite a bit. And in terms of being able to respond to any issues, we're in a pretty good place.
Absolutely, I can assure you that the gritting team was on it, to use a modern expression. They were out there fast, and we track the weather very closely, and it's something we take great pride in. I mean, it is this time of the year, the cold and the wet, where the roads do suffer, and the point being is that the high maintenance of our roads helps to prevent the kind of, I suppose, the freeze-thaw effects and breaking up the surface, which then costs a lot of money to repair and patch. So again, there is a graph in here in here which shows actually the kind of repairs that we're making or needs to make to potholes has dropped quite considerably, particularly to note. From in April 24-25 compared to 23-24, and similarly November 23-24 compared to 24-25, where we've seen significant drops in the repairs to potholes needed because of our upkeep and also our very proactive approach.
All right, thank you. And sort of one page back from that is the electric vehicle charging, and we see there that on your report there, the number of publicly available electric vehicle charging devices, does that mean per 100,000 population, devices meaning the actual charging units, presumably, yeah. And we see there that what's set out, and then the London rate is set out. In terms of a sort of greater rollout and the idea of looking into a partnership with regard to electric vehicle charging, which sort of direction are we going in? Because initially there were a lot of models. The idea that virtually each council was trying to work out its own model in relation to electric vehicle charging was always a bit of a challenge. So which sort of direction are we looking at?
So, I think the important thing to stress is the partnership working with other boroughs. It just helps to de-risk it, it helps to draw on the expertise from others, but it also means that we can work together to draw down funding to provide for an infrastructure programme. The other thing that I suppose to take into account is the nature and of each borough. So obviously some of the boroughs have very high dense housing, so car usage, car take-up is going to be lower potentially in any case, but also as well there may not be driveways, and so therefore you have to look at the street furniture, the infrastructure, lamp columns, and one might need to run cabling underneath pavements, for example, in order to be able to create the charging network that you need. So I think the key thing for us is working together with a collective and the local authorities such as Brent, Ealing, Hammersmith and Fulham and so on, so that actually we have a partnership model rather than trying to resource all of this ourselves. And it means then that we can move at pace and draw down the necessary funding. And I think that for us is key, is having the resilience and the working together to draw on the funding and the infrastructure and the expertise that we need to take this forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, can I move on to, unless there are any other questions so far? Nope, all right. Cyber, yes? Are you indicating, sorry? Yes. Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
Are we talking about the performance review monitoring report?
Sorry?
Are you talking?
You have to, I've got a frightful
I'm just
I can't hear anything.
asking if you were talking about the budget monitoring report questions.
So we're on...
Item 5.
Performance monitoring,
yep.
Item 5. I'm just going through the various headings. I was going to move on to cyber security, but you can ask any question about any of the topic heads.
Hi. I just wanted to ask about the reduction of phone calls that has been cited in this performance review and the increase of self-service, because we get a lot of complaints from residents not being able to get through, and I wondered if that has been a survey that's done with residents. I appreciate there's been an uptake, but we do get a lot of complaints from residents saying that they can't get through. So I just kind of wanted to know how that performance has been managed and what you're doing to kind of alleviate that. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Councillor Punja. So in terms of, we monitor calls and web hits on a hour-by-hour, day-by-day basis, so there's a huge amount of detail, and we break it down into what service, the call waiting times, so you'll just see the sort of top-line messages. I think when you look at the number of calls, obviously we had a massive spike because of the introduction of garden waste, so that was a significant inbound number of phone calls, answering the questions, getting people to pay. We're just about to launch our new website, which will go into a public beta next week, and that will we'll also be launching, so that will deal with the front end of the website, which is easier to navigate, easier to find the information, easier to make transactions. We'll also be introducing some AI technology onto the front of the website as well very soon, which will enable us to do quicker Q&As for residents as well. And really importantly for our residents is we want our council to be 24/7, 365, rather than just be around the times that officers are in the office. answering the calls. So we want to make it more accessible, find the questions that are easier to answer. So that will help reduce the number of calls, because really the aim is to get people to do things themselves where they can, where they're digitally enabled, to support more of our vulnerable residents that really need our help and support, and actually to deal with the complex queries, because actually when people ring the council, they often don't just want to talk about one thing, they've got multiple needs, and actually my aim is for us to spend longer with our residents rather than less time to deal with complex queries, so we can answer them first time more often, so we can resolve their needs. But we know, we have spikes in things like housing repairs and maintenance, green garden waste, so they do go in peaks and troughs, and I haven't actually looked at the stats today, but actually given it snowed this morning for a short while, it didn't last very long, but obviously that's going to cause issues with boilers, with people's homes, so we do flex around in terms of the resident hub, because we have the ability, because across a number of people, to flex the need depending on where the issue is. So if there is more issue in one area, then we can divert resources to that. It's always frustrating, as you do in your personal life, when you have to wait and hang on to the call and you can't get through to the person, but actually we're seeing a lot of the demand is where people can do things themselves. So that's over, as part of the digital strategy, we've put the investment into making sure we've got more accessible forms. The new website itself is going to be more accessible, so we've run some accessibility exercises to make sure it's easier to use. Obviously, you've got multiple languages in the borough as well, so actually the AI technology will be able to do some automatic translations. So as part of the digital investment around the digital strategy is we will be hopefully reducing our calls over a period of time, hopefully answering them first time, but we recognise across the year, yes, people have had to wait, people have been frustrated, but actually, as Dan said, it doesn't always work with people in terms of, people automatically want to ring up the council and have their query answered straight away. So we want to either give them that digital support of how to use the website and recognising that it's a bit easier to use, but also, support with digital inclusion as well. So we've recycled a number of things like our laptops, we've given them out to the community, we've given people connectivity, we've given people mobile phones. So we're really trying to help our more vulnerable people in the borough, the people that don't always have the skills, and post-Christmas we'll also be doing an exercise to support more of our vulnerable citizens, to teach them a little bit more how to use digital, but also how to use AI, recognising that we want to skill our residents up into that space as well. And my last bit of reflection is we used to have 120 people answering the telephones in this organisation. We have less than 20 at the moment in terms of our core resident hub. So we've significantly reduced the number of people answering the phone, so that's obviously generated a significant financial benefit for the council, but actually our service is better than it was before. So actually we've done a really good exercise. This council has invested in the right way in AI. We were cited by the Prime Minister in January as one of the first public sector bodies to introduce AI across the council. We were the first local authority, and now we're introducing the second generation of AI into us as a council. So it's something that this council should be very proud of.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers, for the report. I have a few questions. The first one being on the housing repairs, because listening to residents in our ward, obviously they'll only come for us when there's a genuine issue, and they'll come with queries, quite a few, in regards to housing repairs and the time it takes to carry out the repairs. On the report it says there's a C2 rating for housing repairs. Could the officers give me some indication or some understanding of what that C2 housing inspection rating is and how it compares with the overall ratings?
Thank you. I can answer that question. So earlier this year we had an inspection by the regulator of social housing of our regulated landlord housing service, and we were awarded a C2 grade. So C2 is the second highest grade, C1 being the highest. Most local authorities that are being inspected are being graded C3, so the grade lower than us. So what that means, though, C2, is that there is still some room for improvement, and there were 4 standards that we were assessed against. One of them had already met in the standard, and another was very close to meeting the C1 standard. Not that it's published in that way, but the fact that there was no recommendations against one of those standards indicates that we were already operating at that standard. Repairs overall was found to be very positive by the regulator compared to other landlords that they inspect. So we were very responsive in terms of completing repairs on time with a high, what they call first rate fix. So that's positive. I think the other thing to note is that repairs is a reactive arrangement. Or necessity, so therefore it's also helpful to take into account the huge investment that we're making to improve homes. We're investing over 108 million to improve elements of our properties, so windows, kitchens, bathrooms, boilers, and where we've accelerated and actively progressed elements of that planned maintenance programme, such as boiler replacements, we've seen a significant drop in the need to repair or call-outs for boiler repairs. And obviously with our investment improvements that we're making, it also benefits tenants. So improvements in gas boilers and other central heating systems means that they're living in more thermally efficient and energy efficient homes, which cost them less to heat and maintain as well. So, which was all recognised very positively by the inspection team. But overall they were very positive, and we've subsequently had follow-up meetings with them, and they've got no concerns. But they are obviously they're required to work with us and to check in on progress, but they've got no concerns. They've not reported any concerns to us.
All right, thank you. I'll take one more from Councillor Mann.
Okay. On potholes and repair of potholes, does the council only repair reported potholes, or does it do its own checks as well?
No, we proactively check the condition of our roads, and should we find a defect of any sort, we schedule it for quick response works.
All right, Councillor Punja.
Thank you. I just one further question, that's all. I was looking at the housing and the review, performance review on housing, and I just wanted to ask what proportion was new builds to acquisitions, because it doesn't show that in the report. You just got a big graph that kind of demonstrates that.
I think I need to come back to you with the exact answer through the Dem Services team. We can give a latest position.
Thank you. Just want to move on to cyber security for the minute, and frankly we could go on for the rest of the meeting on that, but and Matthew had spoken to us previously about that, but just a bit of an update really in terms of our systems and in terms of our checks against cyber security. You were going to come back to us about where we are and the sort of threats that we get and the sort of counters that we're able to deal with.
Sure. As the committee knows, we have the Local Government Association Cyber 360 review, and it was great news that Hillingdon was cited for its strong leadership, robust governance. I'm trying to make Councillor Punja laugh. It was quoted in the report, as well as proactive investment in cyber security. So what we've done over the last, we're actually talking about last year, which is when the review happened. But in terms of the things that we've been doing recently, obviously you can see the number of cyber threats and phishing attacks and phishing threats. So we monitor that on an hour-by-hour daily basis. We have really good technology. So we're a Microsoft house. We've got the Microsoft technology that sits behind what we do. But actually, we've got good systems. Most of them are cloud-based, so we mitigate a lot of risks. We're putting forward some investment into doing the last bit of investment that we really need to do is just doing the last bit of our backup investment to make sure if anything does happen. As I said in the committee before, is you can never eliminate the threat of cyber. So, but some of the mitigation measures are having the right technology stack, having the right perimeter, but also training. So we've done a lot of exercises with our staff around phishing. So we've done phishing simulations over the previous year, and we rolled out cybersecurity training as part of our sort of mandatory training and data awareness that we make sure all staff do. Because actually data is our gold. We need to protect the data within this organisation and make sure we're using it appropriately, but also help staff understand what are those threats I'm sure most of the committee will be aware, it's an ever-changing landscape. When I look at the metrics, I get to see where the attacks coming from, what countries, what areas, what type they are, but also they're becoming more and more sophisticated over time. As a council, we've done the smart thing of investing at the right time, so we're not behind the curve. We're ahead of the game. My plan is always to stay ahead of the game because you never know what the threat is. And what you don't want to be is in a catastrophe situation where you have that threat and that attack. And again, if you watch the news, they're happening in big organisations at the moment, ones you don't expect. Even with the providers like Microsoft and AWS, they've been attacked, and and you'd have seen the consequences. So we don't want to be in that space. Luckily, as a local authority, the threat levels are obviously less than some big businesses and some of the big tech houses. So we're fortunate in that respect. But we know we're being attacked all the time. So we've got the good defence. But really, staff are our key, making sure that we're not giving away passwords, we're not giving away information, and that's why we've got the training and development programme to make sure that we can mitigate those risks. But also, it's led from the top as well. So making sure we've got the buy-in of the cabinet member, but also we've got the buy-in of the corporate management team and the chief executive as well, as it's a really important issue, and that's why it's mandatory training. So I think we're in a really good space over here, and I hope I never have to report to the committee we've had a cyber attack that's been successful.
Well, of course, we've heard about quite a lot of big company cyber attacks, and you would say we're in a better position than they were.
I mean, they invest a whole lot more than we do in cyber security, but they're threatened more, and the threats are more sophisticated. Also, with the advent of AI-based hacking, it's a lot easier to hack people at the moment. The threats are more difficult, as in you've got fake people and fake voices, even faking people within the organisation. So, it's really difficult from a staff point of view and we've got to be on top of the game of showing what those threats might be and to educate our staff. But we do pick up, unfortunately sometimes, threats happen and they are successful, but we catch them really quickly, and I'm blessed that I have a really hard working and a really dedicated and a really experienced cyber security team as well, that eliminate all those threats.
All right, thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. Can I commend officers on what I thought was an incredibly well laid out report and very easy to understand and read, and it's good to see. I just wanted to do two questions. One's around local procurement, and I was really pleased to see that the local procurement from local businesses is continuing to rise, and I think that's incredibly important that Hillingdon is backing local business consistently. So I was pleased to see that. What more can be done, though, to maximise that positive trend? And then around a little bit to get into to follow on from Councillor Mann's question around whether we check the roads. I was really pleased to hear that we do. So potholes are reported down from last year. What changes have contributed towards this improvement, taking into consideration that I believe that Hillingdon may have the largest amount of road and pavement of any borough in London? How can we continue to sustain this? Because I think it's a really good news story, given we've got potentially, with the most roads, the most potholes to fill, and yet we're performing well above some of our neighbours who I, like Dan, won't name. Thank you.
If I deal with the second question first, this is the exciting bit. This is going to be a nice crossover now, that we are looking at AI to help us. So if in everyday language, we strap AI technology and monitoring technology onto all of the vehicles that move around this borough that the council own. We will then build up a very intelligent picture of all of the condition of our roads very quickly. It allows us then, and to keep that up to date every single day, it allows us to deal with spots and to therefore deal with defects a lot faster, which generally means we spend less money, stitching time and all of that. So I think that's the exciting bit that's coming. I mean, the fact is that, Councillor Small, we have invested so heavily, for well over a decade in our roads, means that actually we're keeping on top of things, and you're right, we do have the most miles to service and still look at our great performance. So it is a measure of the investment we're making and how we've been listening to residents.
And on procurement, I mean, it's really important that we understand the spend of our local suppliers, and we've got good metrics that surround this. And I think Dan gave the perfect answer before. It's actually the composition of the borough and the services we run lend themselves towards that, having that agile procurement supply chain that enables us to, as Councillor Punch said, when residents are frustrated and they want repairs happening straight away, well, we've got a bank of local suppliers that can turn around those repairs really quickly, and you've got that across multiple services. You're not always going to get a split as you might like in terms of the amount of local suppliers versus non-local suppliers, but also the big box of, for example, in Q1 of 2025, when you've got the amount spent inside and outside of the borough, you've also got the ones that are around the borough as well that contribute to the local economy rather than big national suppliers. So there's the sort of fairly binary measure of in and out doesn't quite tell the story, because actually we try and source locally, we try and work with people that are in the surrounds, as well as having some big suppliers out there, and even say national companies that are in the borough like APCOA. Sometimes they're not classed as a local supplier, but they are a supplier within the borough. So actually it's about working with the best people to do the right things given the circumstances, and I think we get the blend about right as a borough.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who this is for, perhaps Matthew. So it was just a question around a thriving economy. So this is one of the pillars of the strategy, but there wasn't that much in the report. So it was just whether or not you could share a couple of sort of tangible deliverables that we've got in this space around, this is the first time I think with Councillor Tutwell we have growth in the title of a cabinet member of some of the stuff we've perhaps done this year that it's worth calling out.
I mean, one of the things that we've invested in quite heavily is actually engaging with business and holding events to encourage investment in the borough. And it is particularly about opening up discussion about where there might be opportunities. I mean, here's a good example, the sort of data centres that we've got in the borough, huge, eye-watering amounts of investment. And we're very well positioned geographically as a borough to connect into the wider sort of network and infrastructure that supports data centres. And I know that Councillor Tutwell has been very active, along with Julia Johnson, in engaging with those companies. And I suppose, what can we do to facilitate their plans that then benefit residents and support employment, investment in local facilities and infrastructure, social value as well, and so on, and working with schools to create that kind of spillover of benefit into both communities and also local business. So it's something we're really investing in quite heavily. It's part of the sort of vision that we've got, that we're building for the borough. And so where we are working is, in particular, is very strongly around the Uxbridge vision. And so working with the Chamber of Commerce, creating a vision for the town centre that then brings everyone, gels everyone together, and it connects into St Andrew's Park and the kind of streetscape as we don't run down the high street, and what we want the future of that to look like, and working with education establishments such as Uxbridge College and so on. So there are a whole range of partners. I mean, it's an exciting time, to be honest, and you can see, particularly with the advent of sort of new investment in technology such as AI, it's just a huge growth area. But I think it's one that we're actually very well placed, both geographically to take advantage of and work with our partners, but also I think the commitment from the council to do so is really strong.
Councillor Banerjee.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo Councillor Smallwood's comments around the quality of this report. I found it quite easy to read, and it's just very well laid out. My question is around page 29 and the residents' calls handled. Can someone just explain this to me? So when I look at this chart, and let's just take September, and the chart underneath that in terms of abandoned calls, is that 32% of 14,000 calls that was abandoned? So my maths isn't great. Around 4,000 calls were abandoned. Is that how I read that, or is the abandoned calls separate? And if I may, Chair, a follow-up question. How are we dealing with abandoned calls? So I'm trying to think of an example. Maybe British Gas is not the best example. When you call them, they take your number in case the call does drop and they call you straight back. Is that something we do? Because, again, what I'd like to know, this is a sort of multi-layered question, how long do we take to answer calls? Are people just getting fed up and they hang up? Or is it just, I don't know, bad connection? Or, I don't know. So if someone could just answer those questions for me, that would be great. Thank you.
You were spot on, so it's 32% of the total amount of calls. So roughly, if you take September, which is, was a high number in 23-24, less in 24-25, is about a third. If we go back to where we ended up at the end of the year, 27%. So that's quite a high number, and it's I'll be honest, is people getting fed up of waiting and they just put the phone down. So we track how many calls are coming in, and then they abandon the call. Either the wait time's too long, or sometimes, like me personally, is you call, you think you might get in because it depends what time you call, and then you go, well, actually, we show the queue length when people ring up, so people just go, I'll try a different time. So you can perceive it as negative, but actually it's part of just generally how things work. But you also want to reduce the amount of abandoned calls. So the point was right. So we don't do the call back. What we're trying to do is build in the chatbot facility so we can deflect calls to the right person. We can hopefully answer people's questions first time and reduce the level of abandonment. But actually, the overall aim is we don't want people calling us unless they really, really have to call us. And that's why we want to have a better website so it's easier to use. Because the website is fairly dated at the moment, actually people will prefer to use the phone if the website's not good, or if there's not a chatbot on the website, they're more likely to use the phone. And actually, a lot of the usage now is mobile based, as you know. So, not a lot of people are sitting at home on their laptop trying to do transactions. People are doing it on the move as they go. So actually, by giving people the facility, hopefully they'll be calling us less. And we're also about to launch something called Love Clean Street, which you'll be able to do more environmental and street-based services on your mobile phone. So that will be things like reporting an abandoned vehicle, reporting a fly tip, and that's geo-coded, so you'll be able to do it when you're there on your phone. You'll be able to track where you are. It will be a seamless integration into the back office, and that will stop people having to go through the forms or ring up. So we want to nudge people in the right direction to be able to use more modern technology, and we've got a lot of improvements coming out over the coming 1, 2, 3, 4 months in terms of how we're improving what we do. But ultimately the aim is to reduce the abandoned calls. Also, the other flip of it is we want to answer people's calls first time and resolve their issue. And actually, you'll see a lot of abandoned calls are people ringing us back up to find out what's happening with their thing. So whether it's a homelessness application, whether it's a housing repair. So that's why we're also trying to improve My Account, so people can track where they are on their case. Because actually a lot of the calls are around case management, colloquially, so I want something done, what is happening with that thing that I want doing? And actually by giving people the information, and I'm a massive advocate about giving people the information so they can make the right decisions for themselves and they know what's happening, and that's about us being more transparent and more open as a council, is by opening that up onto our website and into people's My Account, is we'll be giving people more control of where they are, so they won't necessarily feel the need to go, what's happening with my application? So we can also ping back text messages. We'll be able to update people. Eventually we want to, a bit like this morning, is where roads are shut, where you've got issues in your local area, people will be able to sign up and get notifications and alerts relating to the area where they live. Because as Councillor Smallwood said, we are a massive borough. We've got loads of roads. We're quite a diverse and a very different borough, so people are more interested in their local area as opposed to the whole of the borough. So actually by tailoring alerts to what people need, is they'll be able to find the information they want more quickly. So we're investing heavily and we're improving what we do, and that will reduce things like abandoned calls.
All right, I think Dan wanted to come in.
Just wanted to echo what Matthew was saying, really, that abandoned calls shouldn't always be seen as a measure of something that's poor, or something that's we wouldn't want, because it can be a measure that residents are getting the information about their alternative channels through the initial message, they then hang up and go, do you know what, I'll go online because I've got to wait 5 minutes and I can do it within the 5 minutes that I would be waiting. So I think it is important to recognise that from the work we've looked at around abandoned calls in the housing repair service, a number of tenants were actually jumping onto the tools that are available to them. And for example, one of the things that we've done with Matthew's team is we used to get a lot of calls around, can you tell me what my rent account is, how much money that's in. Actually, we've provided the app to do it self-service, and a lot of people go, oh, I can do that online now. I'll hang up and I'll just go online. So actually, it is a measure as well that we're giving our residents information about alternative channels for self-service and for convenience as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Small.
Thank you, Chair. Matthew, it looks like in the season of goodwill, it looks like it's becoming AI's answer to Father Christmas, delivering so much in the season of goodwill. But obviously, when you get things for Christmas, sometimes they're great, but they're not. That you have to buy the batteries, and because you forgot to get them, and they're not always working 100%. But it's great that you've got it, and I'm sure what we got has. How are we going to allow people to be able to feed back any errors or problems so that we can have the Rolls-Royce service that we expect Hillingdon to provide?
Thank you, Councillor Smallwood. So we go through a set process when we're delivering anything, which is, at the moment, we're in what's called a private beta, so we're doing some internal tests. We've tested it with accessibility groups, staff groups, some other groups, and we'll be launching, for the website, we'll be launching the public beta, which means over a period of time that we will be launching it. Members of the public and members will be able to feed back to us, and we will make improvements as we go. I think previously when we launched our website, it was seen as you launch it and then you kind of leave it apart from some content changes. Whereas we've got a new supplier for our website. We certainly want to be more agile. We will be trotting out, that's maybe a bad term, trotting out new changes to the website on a regular basis as we update what we do, particularly on the transactional elements. But it's really important that we do get feedback, and what we strive to do is to listen, learn and change, because that's true digital development, is getting the feedback and changing what you do. And I've been confident enough actually to get it out into a public beta knowing it's not perfect. And actually we could spend a lot of time checking all the content and making sure everything is perfect, but actually what we want to do is get it out there. It's much better looking, it's much easier to use, and we will iterate it and change it over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months and get it better and better. But the feedback is really important, but particularly from different groups, different accessibility standards, and also obviously checking the website and checking the development on the different mechanisms that people use. So different types of phones, laptops, and everything that people do now. And obviously with the AI introductions, there's the importance of helping people be able to use those different mechanisms as well. So do the training, development, the learning, the digital inclusion as well. So we do it as a whole package.
All right, thank you. Councillor Punja.
Thank you. Matthew, did I hear you say that we are going to be now using Love Clean Streets, and is that going to be replacing the GOS system?
So GOS is pretty much already gone. So we have a new provider called Jadu. So we've been working with them on the website. Love Clean Streets is I'll try and describe it as a sort of plug-in to the website. So it's additional functionality on top of the website which does those environmental-based services. So, when we looked at the metrics and when we look at the feedback, obviously street scene and understanding what's out there is of particularly importance to our residents. And actually, it was a little bit clunky using the GOS forms. And you'll be really pleased to know that we will improve member inquiries as well on top of it. So we're just doing the work on that at the moment. So looking at all the process flows. So what we have is a different content management system. We have a new case management system which enables us to, and we've got some good skills and some good back office technology because we're a good Microsoft house to look at the process flows within what we do. So part of the work that I do is make sure it's an end-to-end journey, so in terms of the data and the case management. So Love Clean Streets is great for the residents, but also we've got to make sure it integrates to our back office. So for example, let me give an example. So for abandoned vehicles, we now have an automated check to see whether a car is taxed, for example. So previously, you'd have to look it up, you'd have to go and check, well, that happened straight away, so we've got the integrations with the DVLA, so we can understand whether it's our responsibility or not, or the DVLA's responsibility to see whether it is abandoned vehicle, and residents will get frustrated because they see an abandoned vehicle. It's only when it's, and I'm looking it down to check whether I'm correct, is it's only whether it's unsafe is our responsibility, but we check also whether it's taxed or not taxed, because if it's taxed, then actually it's fine. So actually we are doing more to explain to residents what are the parameters, we'll make it easier for them to use, but also when it's an issue, you can take a picture, it's geocoded, it will go straight into the back office and someone can deal with it more quickly, rather than a piece of data going to somebody else, then to somebody else, then to someone else to deal with. It's all automated, so it happens much more quickly, and that's providing a better service for our resident, but also more satisfaction that when you report something, you also know the progress of it, so it will constantly automatically tell you what's happening with your case or your ticket or the thing that you're doing, and that's better customer satisfaction. And back to the previous point is, that will reduce the failure demand and people ringing up to go, what's happening with that?
We did say previously that as we've gone on this sort of journey, that the teaching of residents, if you like, to move away from constant phone calls, and then the main phone call, and then subsidiary ones, and then others. It will take some time because the whole system needs to sort of bed in and become familiar to them. So that's been a constant theme. I do want to move on. Because we need to cover other things. But I'll take Councillor Banerjee.
Just a very quick one from me, Chair. So I've heard a lot about the new website this evening, and something just from my own personal experience and the work I do during the day is around sort of like stress testing the new website. So today was a good example, but we've had, you know, like bad weather episodes in the borough previously with like floods and, you know, not quite sort of like, you know, gales or anything, but you do have like windy weather when fences go down. But my question is that, how much stress testing have we done on the website? So if, you know, people were snowed in, or we did have like flash flooding, everyone went to the website, they wanted to like log a ticket or a complaint or an issue, could it handle like high volumes? Just like reassurance, because if we don't provide sufficient capacity for self-serve, they'll go back to calling in. So if they don't trust the website, they'll go back to ringing in. I just want to, you know, get some comfort that that's something that we've definitely thought about. Thank you.
Yeah, really good question. So volumes aren't a problem. Actually, a lot of it is around comms and showing people what they can do with the new website. So all the functionality won't be launched straight away, so I just want to manage expectations that the more hyper-local alert-based stuff isn't quite ready yet, and that will come out over time. But we also need to communicate with our residents about that's how you can use a website. You know, getting people to sign up to my account, getting people to sign up to when we launch the alert. So let me give an example. So there was a fire last week in Eastcote. So actually, if you had signed up as an Eastcote resident, you were in that postcode, we would have been able to alert you to that. We'd have been able to send you a link to, you know, the London Fire Brigade Twitter, which had the news article, and then we'd have been able to update people as things progressed. So the same would happen with if it's a snow or a flood or a fire, or whatever the incident is. That will help both how we do emergency planning, but also we want to be more proactive and reactive as a council, rather than, you know, people calling us. It's a good example of, you know, we don't want people to call us to find out what's happening. We want to give people the information and proactively give it to them. But like with your personal life, is you want an alert, and you want an alert with a link to find out more information, and you want it when it happens rather than go and find it yourself. So I happened to, because I was on Gold last week, you know, having to look around what's in the media, what's not in the media, but actually by having that information straight to you, straight to the residents that are affected, will enable us to do more resilient emergency planning, but get information in people's hands more quickly. So I'm really excited about the developments. Again, managed expectations is not quite there, but all members will be getting the email about the launch of the private beta, so you can all give us feedback as well. And I would ask you to encourage your the residents of your ward, and when you talk to people, is to test it, give us feedback and suggest improvements, because we want to find out what residents think, and we want to test some of those services just to get them better and better. But again, they're not always going to be perfect, but we want people's feedback.
All right, thank you. Look, we'll move on to again, each one of these agenda items could take a very, very long time, but we do need to cover quite a lot more. So we'll move on to agenda item 6 now, which is the budget and spending report. So we've got Steve and Matthew and Dan all being responsible for this one, but I think Steve to start first.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper you've got before you for this item is concerning the month 5 financial position. Following the request from last time, we've covered more on the overall council position within this to make that clearer, as well as then going on to focus on the position for those elements of the council that fall within the portfolio specific to the committee. So you have them both there referenced for you. So in terms of the high level position as at the end of August forecast, the council was forecasting an overspend of 30 million against its budget. So it's spread across operating budgets, and the fact that we had minimal reserves at the end of last year, we are not progressing with the drawdown of reserves that was budgeted either. That generates another 4.2 million of variance on that. Some mitigations planned through interventions to try and recover some of this situation, whether that's through identifying savings through spend control measures or other means. We will endeavour to do that over the remaining months of the year. In terms of breakdown of this, 28 million across service areas, largely demand pressures, counting for nearly 20 million. Still a substantial amount shortfall in service savings of about 8 million. That's in addition to unallocated budget savings held centrally that will not be delivered. 3 million from treasury activities and interest costs, and all offset by some underspend on staffing costs. So you'll see from Table 1 that the variance projected for the year as at month 5 is now 30 million against budget, which would notionally take our closing reserves at the end of the year into negative territory to the order of nearly £25 million. Table 2 sets out the savings tracker across the organisation. So you'll see that we have 49% of savings on track or banked. However, a substantial number of savings are still not off the ground and will not deliver for this year. So overall slippage currently projected in this forecast of just over 13 million across amber and reds, and 1.9 million identified at that stage that would need to be written off. So a total of 15.1 million non-delivery out of the total 38.8 million of savings. That 38.8, of course, including some carry-forward savings from the previous year, having budgeted 34 million of new savings for the year. We also highlight risks and mitigations. So the risks and mitigations are not included in the forecast, but are there for awareness as these may come to pass. So those are listed out there in terms of demand exposure, the application of capital receipts to fund activity, and so on. Then moving on to the performance for those areas within the portfolio. So 3 areas, as you will know: finance, corporate services, and place. Finance reporting a pressure of nearly 4 million. Nearly 3 million of that relates to the Treasury budget and the adverse financial position, deriving increased borrowing costs, and compounded by staffing pressures due to the need to bring in additional resource above the budget. Corporate services, mainly savings shortfalls across savings related to resident hub and human resources, and some shortfall on managed vacancy factors, so staffing costs essentially. And then in place, shortfall for those elements of place that fall under this committee of 0.7 relating to undelivered savings. Largely, the savings are showing about 73% on track or banked. That breaks down between the three areas, as you see on page 41 in the report. I'll be repeating myself, I think, in terms of going through those variances. And then you've got some tables at the back that show the breakdown. Thank you.
All right. Again, we could probably spend the rest of the time this evening on this one. But I suppose one of the main issues really is in terms of the savings and the bars or the barriers to the savings. In each of the areas that you've described, there's been a shortfall in terms of the savings. And it may well be that there are different explanations for the different heads under our portfolio, but and similarly across the other select committees, there are similar shortfalls in savings. I mean, what have been the most significant barriers or problems with regard to achieving the savings? Because when we first came to look at this in the first meeting of this financial year, we kind of started to drill down into very specific areas, and I remember there was one in particular which was, I know it's a small one, but nevertheless it was sort of indicative in terms of garages and rentals and things, and the sort of very particular things that can be done in regard to even small areas, but then if you scale that up, the detail that can be attached to savings in regard to larger areas. So I suppose really what I'm trying to get at is what is it that's preventing us from being able to achieve these savings, and why is it that we are confident that those savings will, when rolled over, be achieved in later years?
Thank you. I think you do need to look at each individual item to understand why they are in particular not delivering. I think you can still draw some general inferences around the proposals that have been put forward. There are a number of cases where there are delays in terms of the rollout of the activity, or the expectation of when that activity can start to bear fruit and be implemented in order to generate the saving was assessed to be earlier than actually was achievable. So there's some optimism potentially in terms of the delivery of when those savings can be delivered. And I think considering all the steps and actions required to deliver a saving is really key in order to make sure that a realistic saving is put forward that can be achieved. There are some savings that will not deliver. We've marked that in the schedule. And in terms of, yes, rolling these forward into 26-27 year and the deliverability of that, we are going through all of those savings. So we're going through all of the new proposals for next year, but also reviewing these current savings which are shown to be slipping into next year to make sure that they are going to be deliverable next year, to take a much more robust view on those, so a clearer view on those that are going to deliver in next year, so that we can be certain on their reliability.
And Councillor Banerjee.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just focus on table 2, the savings tracker, and just clarify a question for me? Looking at the colour coding and the total 2025-2026 savings programme, I just did a simple calculation. If you look at amber, light red, let's call it red, 42% of the savings are already having problems, serious problems, or written out. We're only in month 5. How did things change so much in what I think is a short period of time? We're not even halfway through the fiscal year, and already 42% of the savings are pretty much at risk and causing problems. And as a second part to the question, what does a serious problem in delivery mean? If you could just clarify that term for me, please, that'd be useful. Thank you.
So I was very conscious coming into the organisation, having seen performance in previous year, in particular in terms of the delivery of savings. I think last year we only delivered 1/3 that were banked by the end of the year. So I was very conscious of the potential for optimism in the numbers. And so that was an immediate area of focus for me, to make sure that I understood and had confidence in the numbers that were being forecast, and didn't want there to be late surprises through the year, that we identify issues early so that issues can then be understood, acknowledged, and then addressed, and the appropriate action taken as a consequence. So over those first month and a half of me joining, we went through the savings. We were challenging all of the heads of service and the corporate directors and people involved in those savings to make sure that they could stand by those savings and they would be deliverable in the current year. And it's through that process of some quite strict focus and spotlight on these that we identify any issues early, so that we can take the appropriate action. The problems in delivery, it may be that there are just delays in getting to the rounds to the activity. If there's barriers, I can't really sort of give you specifics on that when there's so many. There's a big long list of savings. But I think phasing is a key one as to when things can start to come in, rather than giving a full year effect in year one, as well as fundamentally, are they actually going to be delivered? Are they deliverable at all? So it was a very clear focus on making sure that we know exactly where we stand financially with these, and flush out issues early.
Thank you.
Okay, so when you're doing this exercise of looking, and I really want to focus on the savings side, because that really is key to all this in a sense. When you're, and we appreciate the length of time you've been in the organisation as well, but when you're looking at a set of savings, or a set of savings that have been marked out, and the anticipation is that they will be met, but they're not being met. What are the real difficulties in achieving? Is it because having been set, they're impractical or too difficult, or really in terms of the whole operation just are impractical? Or is it the case that there are relatively, and I say relatively, easy wins that aren't being applied? I'm interested in terms of what you've looked at so far, and what you're seeing, as to whether there are trends or whether there are a lot of individual problems, in order that realistically we don't get into this position again, in terms of being able to set realistic savings targets and achievable ones.
Yeah, so I'll give Steve a little bit of a break. So I think you used the term easy or quick wins. So if you look at our budget and you look at the performance of our services, we are extremely low cost in terms of a local authority. So in terms of how we benchmark our costs against our services, against London boroughs and against our near neighbours, we are extremely low cost as an organisation, and still high performing. So there are no real quick wins for delivering savings. They're always difficult delivering savings, and £38 million plus worth of savings is a significant amount for an authority like ours. In terms of some of the savings issues, and when you look at the chart, it's not always that we're not delivering the savings, we're not delivering it within the year. So, for example, on some of my savings is, I haven't been able to deliver them this year. If you look at the amount of effort it takes, particularly on doing things like staffing restructures and the effort it takes to do that, and also the consultation period, is Steve's right. We need to be more realistic as an organisation looking at the staggering of savings over time. There's always that kind of optimism bias that you'll do things more quickly than you think you are. So Steve's added a lot of rigour in terms of how we're looking at that optimism bias and looking at how we've got realistic delivery plans. But sometimes you can't see the sheer volume of everything. And for example, I'm doing a lot of work on the resident hub to reduce the costs of that. But that's restructure after restructure, and I will deliver the savings that set out, but I won't deliver it all in year. So that's why some of it will move into the next financial year. So that's an example of how you don't always deliver it in the financial year, but the commitment is still to deliver that. And in terms of some of my savings, is I under-delivered in my HR savings. I've tactically chosen to do that as the corporate director for that area because of the sheer volume of work we've got in HR at the moment around the number of restructures, the amount of work we have to do in HR. We're a people-based business. We will deliver the savings, but not in this year because it's not right for the organisation at the moment. The importance is you do deliver the savings, but you can't always deliver it when you're going to set out to. But in terms of no quick wins, because we are extremely low-cost council.
Steve?
As we go through the savings this year, there's a number of areas that we are looking to probe. So we're asking people what they have in the form of calculations behind their assumptions on the value that they're putting forward. For example, we're asking them about the timetable for delivery of these things. So yes, consultation will naturally take a number of months before you can deliver a saving. So you couldn't necessarily, depending on the start point, deliver a full year effect from anything that requires that. There will be potentially dependencies, and some of those dependencies could be on third parties outside of the council. So the gift of delivering that saving is not necessarily solely with the council. So, that in itself could present a barrier to the delivery of the savings, for example.
All right, thank you. Yeah, go on.
Thank you, Chair. We introduced a new process for tracking savings this year, or proposals being put forward. We've tried to formalise the process, so all savings are now signed off by a director and divisional level manager. We've been sending out weekly summaries back to say, this is what you have committed to. I don't want any divisional manager or service manager saying, I didn't know about this saving. That does happen in organisations. We've developed a form that includes a description, what consultation might be required that can delay the process, any dependencies. We've put down key milestones so we can then track the savings through the year. We don't have to wait till the year end to find out that something we should have done 6 months earlier hasn't happened. We confirm every form we get. We email back to the people who are named as being responsible so they are aware of it. We've taken every saving that isn't in the tracker that marked as blue delivered and asked people to say, even if you're saying at this moment that it's going to be delivered by the year end, can you fill one of these forms in that tells us, yes, these are the steps and this is how we're going to do it. We've also asked for workings to be attached to everyone so we can look at them and say, does that make sense? Do your numbers add up if you multiply A by B? It's a much more formal process that will stand us in much better stead for the future.
That's very helpful, thank you. Councillor Punter.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm listening to everything that you guys are saying, and I'm really confused because we were told at the beginning of, at this time last year, that we had to make £34 million worth of savings in year, otherwise we'd be financially bankrupt. Now, we are now at a point where we're minus 25 million at month 5, and we are talking about rolling over savings to next year. Why has that position changed? What has changed it? And we did everything from zero-based budgeting to looking at optimism bias and all of these things, which was absolutely addressed in the Section 25 report in February that this needed to leave. Reviews are happening quite late, and what I'm seeing is a cross-cutting savings target that hasn't achieved any of its cross-cutting savings target, and maybe because there is a real uncertainty of who is responsible for that is probably the reason why it hasn't been achieved. But I just want to know how we have gone from being told that we needed to get in-year savings to rollover now, because that doesn't make sense to me when we are £25 million overdrawn at month, and that's us now, and we've gone to EFS, to the government, to apply for EFS for, I don't even know what amount yet.
So yes, the budget for 25/6 was predicated on the basis of 34 million of savings, which were new in order to deliver that budget. It turned out that there were undelivered savings from the previous year that were rolled forward at the end of the preceding year, adding to that, so that's why it's 38.8 and not 34, but you're right, there was 34 million that was put forward. And yes, there are savings now which are not being delivered in year. So that is the situation. I can't, I wasn't there at the time when those savings were put forward. I would have taken the approach that I'm taking now in order to make sure that I am confident in those savings, and I wasn't part of the process, but clearly there were commitments made at the time that are now not able to be continued. So if anyone else wants to add.
All right, thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. I echo the same concerns from Councillor Punja, but if we've got a 38.8 million savings plan, which clearly is not going to be deliverable, or doesn't look like it's going to be deliverable, what services are at risk? And if those savings fail to materialise, which ones do you feel are going to be at risk?
I'm not going to say that services are at risk. We will be taking an approach to setting the budget for the coming year whereby we ensure that we are able to deliver the savings that we commit to and that they are properly considered in setting them forward. Difficult decisions will no doubt need to be made, but that we are in that process at the moment, and those proposals will be put forward as part of the future budget papers that will go to Cabinet and to full Council.
Thank you. Councillor Banerjee.
Thank you, Chair. So, Steve, apologies, this question is probably for you. And I'm just, asking this question as purely, professional interest. In my line of work, when I was in practice, we called it PPF, planning, budgeting and forecasting. In your opinion, how robust is that process in this council? And because I see variances that maybe like double digits from month to month, and that makes you really uncomfortable as an accountant that things are fluctuating so much. How do you get a better grip on this process, and what controls and mitigations would you like to see put in place to make this a more accurate and sort of like, basically more accurate process? Thank you.
I think part of the problem is actually in setting the budget. So what you'll see is, while these are naturally a forecast ends up with variances to budget, but from what I am seeing, the issues are with the original setting of the budget for the year and the flaws in that. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that we are able to forecast with confidence, with greater confidence at this point, where the direction of the council is heading, based on what has been constructed in that budget and what we are now seeing. So this is a bit of a journey that we are going on in order to make sure we've worked through all those aspects of what was set in the original budget and what is achievable in the year. And as we go through the year, we are working that through. So it's been I think we've managed to flush out quite a lot of issues fairly early on in the year, and what you saw last year was a big swing at the very end of the year. Now, nobody wants to have a nice surprise, and clearly a big variance is not particularly welcome news, but it's better that we flush that out early rather than leave it to the end, and then we compound the problem into the following year. So that's the reason why I'm trying to kind of make sure we are clear on where we're heading now. In terms of controls in place, I think it starts with the setting of the budget, which is what we are doing now, and the process we are going through right now, so that we have a clearer position going into next year. We understand drivers of growth, the dependencies, the savings, and how achievable those savings are, so that when we set the budget for next year, we can be more confident in our ability to adhere to the budget that we set. It starts with the budget setting for me. The issues with the forecasting is then about changes in demand for services. So that then depends on the demand models that you have in place, and certainly they are things that we will be focusing on, and we have been focusing on in terms of looking to set the budget for the coming year. But those models need to be able to track the data and the information during the course of the year, and we need to be able to kind of see that early on and how that is going to change.
All right, thank you. Councillor Small.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I wonder what lessons we can learn from our, I was going to say arse-kicking, but I'm probably not allowed to use that phrase in a select committee, counter-fraud team, because actually I think there is some really good news stories about how the counter-fraud team have been. Fraudsters beware, don't come to Hillingdon, because you will be caught and you will be dealt with. So how can we learn the very positive lessons that are in this report from the successes of the counter-fraud team? Yeah.
That's a tough question. So how can we learn the lessons? So we touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of the overall lessons is, what we want to do as a council is we want to eliminate fraud, eliminate debt, collect income where we can. Although we're a local authority, we're a business at heart that serves our community. So we're looking at our business models across the council, and I think some of the lessons learned are, for example, we often don't ask businesses, we don't ask people to pay for our services up front. We spend a lot of time, people have the services, then we invoice them, then we spend a lot of time chasing invoices. So we're looking to move to increasingly a model where you pay up front for the services that you use. That has double benefit because it cuts down the invoices, which takes the need for the manualisation of sending out invoices, posting stuff out, going to collect it or emailing. Then it also reduces the amount of debt we hold as a council, because when people don't pay their invoices, we spend a lot of time trying to chase the debt and collect it, which is the sort of things that the counter fraud team do. So so in terms of the lessons learnt is we're actually doing some work at the moment of looking at debt and who's paying what, and looking at across the whole council, not looking at it in its individual areas, because you'll get multiple residents and businesses that have collections of debt, and therefore we're looking some of the skills of collection. For example, we've invested in open banking, so when we knock on people's doors and ask them to pay the money that they're owed, they can pay it more quickly and easily because you'll have open banking, i.e. they can pay it in whatever means they can, and we've got the payment machines there on the door, rather than sending them an invoice saying you should pay that, or setting up a payment plan, for example. So we've been learning the lessons through the counter fraud team to understand how we become more optimal as a business and changing our business procedures to make sure we can collect money more quickly, because what we want is the money in more quickly, and we want to reduce the levels of debt. So they're the key lessons learned for us.
Councillor Bunger.
Thank you. I appreciate that you weren't here, Steve, but councillors were sold, members were sold that budget, and there was a Section 25 report that reported it, that said that this was a high-risk budget. We asked for this to be gone back, but there was, the Conservative group did actually vote for this budget to go in, and these savings are not being made. So what I would like to know is what cashable savings versus notional savings are there now in this budget? And what has been, because we're just getting to a stage where next month there's going to come in and we're going to be 5 million overspend again, and that's going to add and add and add. And the other thing I want to know is, in your conversations with MHCLG, are you adding all these figures up? Because it was implied for in September, and now we're in November with that much more added on to what needed to be added on.
I don't know, obviously when these savings are put forward, they are intended and they should be cashable. They shouldn't be notional savings, they should be cashable savings, because that brings down the spend of the council in order to balance the budget. Notional savings, in terms of where there's cost avoidance, they either shouldn't be part of the budget, or the growth that they would notionally stop from materialising should be grossed up, so you would have the both. So that all the savings should be cashable. I can't give you a figure on obviously we're reporting on what we are seeing is deliverable in the year, so I can't say that it is going to be X, and we are monitoring that through the year, and we'll keep a close eye on that. In terms of the EFS, yes, there was an application at the end of August. I'm not disclosing here today what figures were in that. However, that will be kept under review. We will make a more formal application for next year and the year after that, potentially as part of setting the budget for the coming year. And we will go through that process, and we will revise our estimates based on the current information.
Of course, the other thing is that we have to remember, and we've been talking a lot and concentrating on the savings, but the pressures on the other side of the equation and the extent of the pressures, not just in terms of our operation in Hillingdon, but pretty much all councils up and down the country. We have some particularly specific ones, but the pressures are very great in terms of being able to deliver. And something that Matthew said earlier on about being a low cost but high delivery council is the way that we want to go, and have been for some considerable time. But I know that Dan wants to come in.
Thank you. And I just wanted to pick up one of the questions, Councillor Punja, that you raised was about the delivery of all expectations around savings. And just to illustrate the point, I mean, and to kind of use Councillor Riley, the Chair's kind of point, homelessness has been, as we know, huge pressure. I mean, if I look at temporary accommodation numbers just 3 years ago, I mean, you're talking, significant fold increases in the use of temporary accommodation, and such that we can't procure accommodation fast enough at the lower cost that we'd like to. So we end up unavoidably, when we, in an emergency situation, procuring accommodation on a higher cost nightly charge basis. So one of the savings this year, or cost reductions this year, was to procure leased accommodation as temporary accommodation, which offers us good quality accommodation on volume at a lower unit cost. And that's proved extremely challenging. And to buy new accommodation as well into the housing revenue account, so that we can boost our supply of social rented accommodation, which requires zero subsidy from the council. And so I know there was, not far from here, a brand new block of flats, 33 units, on the face of it, brilliant, but failed the highest standards that we need around building safety. And so we just couldn't proceed with the purchase. But that was in our plan, and we didn't know that until we'd actually completed some further checks and balances and some invasive tests, for example. that proved that actually this wasn't a property that we wanted to continue with. And similarly, that we've been offered lots of accommodation from house builders who are looking to sell on big blocks en masse, but at least one was asking for quite considerable costs, higher than actually securing private rented accommodation to lease that accommodation. So again, whilst sometimes these plans are best laid and very well worked out, there are things that are outside entirely of our control to deliver. And if you lose pace on securing accommodation, then you lose significant volumes of cost avoidance. And when you combine that with an ever-increasing pressure on presentation around homelessness and the rising cost in the private rented sector, and significant double-digit increases in the cost of temporary accommodation, the unit cost of temporary accommodation, it proves to be very challenging. So there are, in some of these savings, matters or elements which are entirely outside our control. And I think that's, we've discussed a lot of the corporate management team is the need for caution. And whilst I know that I can achieve that, actually it's going to be delayed, or it's going to take a longer period of time. And that's why we're going through an extremely robust process now in terms of the budget, or proposals around the budget setting, which are subject to a considerably more challenged and scrutinised process, in order that we can be confident that any proposals that are put forward have a very high chance of success, and ones that we can be confident in delivering.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. So my question was more around culture and some of the things that perhaps have changed over the past 4 months. So in the letter that I think was dated 24th of July 2025 that we as councillors received from the auditor EY, I just read a quote. They say that we're not confident that the council has a clear understanding of its current financial position, or that the pace of improvement is sufficient to address the systematic weaknesses which exist within the council's financial management and governance. And crucially, we are also not confident that the urgency of the need to address these systematic weaknesses is fully recognised by all decision makers. So it's pretty scathing. I suppose, not to ask you whether you agree with it, but I suppose hopefully to give us some positive or good news over the last 4 months is how have we taken that feedback on board to try and drill this cost-cutting approach in across all levels of management within the organisation. What's changed? Because if you look back on previous years where we've not been able to deliver savings, you do wonder if, there's lots of reasons for it, but is part of it cultural? Is it that we just don't have the right individuals at various levels in the hierarchy driving this forward in some cases? So I appreciate it's quite a broad and open question.
I mean, what I can say is from my perspective, the culture is very strong and very focused on savings. Budget monitoring is there. I think very strong scrutiny on the savings plans that are in place. Governance is certainly, in my experience, now much stronger. It's continued to build on what we had previously, and regular updates monthly updates to cabinet member, frequent updates to the cabinet member for finance, the leader of the council on progress on savings. I mean, no organisation is perfect. We've always got room for improvement, and what I can see, though, is that the changes that have been put in place the last 4 months and earlier actually are really making a difference now. I think some of the things that we are seeing are legacy issues being flushed out, and I'm confident that in terms of this budget setting process that we are going through now, it's built on those much stronger elements of governance, that much stronger challenge and review that I mentioned earlier. And whilst we can't necessarily guarantee for those things that are outside of our control that everything will deliver perfectly, what I'm confident I'm seeing is that a strong leadership, strong scrutiny, and an absolute drive to deliver.
And just on that, the recognition that the statement you're reading is from last year. So it's a reflection on what we did last year, not the reflection on what we're doing at the moment, because that's the auditor's view. So, looking at the significant progress we've made, and obviously we've recruited an amazing corporate director of finance as well. So, as part of the changes is to make sure we've got a strengthened finance function. We've got the finance modernisation programme. Part of that was recruiting Steve as well. So, we recognised that we had some weaknesses. We had always planned to address those, and that wasn't from the auditor's recommendation. We had all those plans in place. We had if you listened to the audit committee last night, we had the governance review implementation or improvement plan. So that was already in place. We'd already set up the finance modernisation programme. We recognised that there was progress we needed to make, and also I think just understanding us as a business and why we were looking at the performance reports is to make sure that we absolutely understand our business metrics, how we're performing, because it's not just about the delivery of savings, it's about how we're running the business on a day-to-day basis. So we've got over 120 dashboards in Power BI that look at the performance and the cost of our services. We'll be bringing to Cabinet in December a report that looks at the benchmarking and the cost of those services, which will come to select committees in the new year, and that will describe of relatively where we are. As Dan said and Steve said, is we've built in the governance, and we do have robust governance for the monitoring and management of our savings target. We have my team have built the app that goes through a rigorous governance process to ensure that we understand where we are on the delivery of the savings, and that goes right the way through from the service manager into the senior management team, into CMT, then into Cabinet on a monthly basis. So there is a regular conversation, and so we've got more robust governance than we've ever had before. But it's always going to be a test for us as an organisation delivering that level of savings within being a high-performing council that has a low-cost base. So they're not easy wins, they're difficult savings to make, and actually when you look across, you look across all of local authorities, delivering that volume of savings is nobody delivers 100%. Our job is to get it, as high as possible. So for example, my savings at the moment are around 80%. It's unrealistic to think it's ever going to get to 100%. What we're trying to do is go, well, if we can't do it in this year, how do we, as Matt said, how do we deliver it next year? So I will deliver 100% of my savings, but 80% of them will be in this year. So, but, and I think the flip of that is it's not just about leadership, is look at the staff survey results. We have an incredibly hard-working members of staff. They understand what they need to do. They understand what's expected of them. They understand where we are as a council, and again we're high performing in terms of our staff survey and what our staff think about us. So it's not all doom and gloom. Yes, we're not delivering all the savings that we set out to, but actually, again, you'll see it when you see the benchmarking results as part of the next performance report, which we will now be doing 6 monthly, because we're becoming more transparent as a council, more regular reports in front of members. You'll see in a regular report on the budget. So again, we are open to that challenge as officers.
All right. At the beginning of the agenda, item 6 is 2 recommendations that we need to approve. Number 1, note the budget monitoring position as at August 2025, month 5 for the Council. Note the budget monitoring position as at August 2025, month 5 for the services within the remit of the Corporate Resources and Infrastructure Select Committee. So we need to approve those recommendations. They agreed? All right, thank you. So let's move on now to agenda item 7, which is the update on the Hayes Regeneration Report. And having read this report, it's very interesting the extent to which there's been resident engagement and consultation with residents. But first of all, before we go into questions about it, Michael, do you want to tell us where we are with all of this?
Thank you, Chair. I'll give you a brief overview on the background first before taking you to where we are at the moment. The Hayes Town estate, also known as Austin Road, was built in the 1970s and consisted of 260 homes. The Avondale Drive estate was built in the 1960s and comprised of 144 homes. One of the problems there was building condition and antisocial behaviour, and the council explored ways to improve the standard of for the residents in those two estates. Also, we looked at the opportunity to deliver additional housing when we would develop the estates. In 2020, the Cabinet agreed that officers should undertake design work looking at a redevelopment option, and an indicative design was put to residents in May 2021, and both ballots were positive. In June 2021, the Cabinet authorised officers to undertake developer procurement across both sites, and also authorised the submission of 2 hybrid planning applications for the estates. Hybrid in the sense that part was full permission, the other part was for outline. In March 2022, the Cabinet approved that Higgins partnership was the preferred bidder, and the final award was approved in July of 22. In September 2022, the Council obtained planning consent and entered into a contract with Higgins Partnership, and that was initially a development agreement which was varied by a deed of variation. Higgins are now nearing completing Phase 1 on Hayes Town Centre, and the Avondale Phase 1A has now been completed and is known as Cherwell Court, and is now, I believe, occupied. Higgins and the Council are also entering into agreements for future phases. Currently, we're looking at a pre-construction service agreement for getting planning consent, which is Section 73 and reserved matters, for the next phases on the estates, and we're also drafting a contract for the demolition of Wellings House. Plus, we're looking as well at accelerating works on Avondale Drive, which would mean the demolition of Glenister and Fitzgerald, which would enable earlier delivery of the housing on this site. Pre-planning public consultations were held, one on each site, in October of this year, and the new proposals are for 296 homes at Avondale Drive. That includes the 30 already delivered, and 562 homes at Hayes Town Centre, which also includes the 80 that will be delivered soon. Construction was planned to take place over 5 phases in Hayes Town Centre and 3 phases at Avondale. Now it's being explored if we can amalgamate some of these and actually speed up the delivery. I suppose some of the history is Higgins started on site in September 20.
I think because we've read the report,
yeah.
We know the
history
that you've set out, which is very good, and thank you for what you've said so far. But I mean, the general impression from the report is that, by and large, things are going on track, and that one of the good things about it is that there has been good resident engagement. But I know that Councillor Smallwood's indicated, so perhaps you'd like to ask your question.
Thank you very much, Chair. It seems like, I understand this is one of the largest regeneration schemes in West London, and when I saw the figures of 79% and 94% in favour, I mean, us politicians can only dream of that kind of admiration or vote unless we're living in like Mother Russia. But I think that is a testament to, I think, the partnership working that the council has done in an attempt to genuinely uplift Hayes Town Centre and the surrounding areas, but through building homes. And I just wondered if you could tell me a little bit about what you believe the benefit to the community that are already there will be, and how that partnership working has taken place for what is a really good news story.
I suppose one of the initial things will be is that the quality of the housing is built to modern standards. It's much more superior than what was there, which had become partially dilapidated and needing a lot of I suppose repairs and maintenance and looking after, whereas this will be new built to current standards, built to current fire regulations. So it's going to be a much nicer build. Also, I suppose just even the architectural features of it are much different. They're not looking kind of blocky or in terms of the massing. We're also looking at the environment as well, in the sense of the surrounding area, that there is sufficient open space, there's play areas, and while this is probably going to be a much more dense development in the sense that there'll be more units in the same areas, in terms of the actual landscaping and play areas and footpaths, it'll have a much better feel to it for the residents. Also, we're introducing some housing in it as well, particularly along Austin Road, where there'll be some Muse housing, and we're also doing it in both developments, is putting in some units that have direct access to the outside to give them the feel of a house while it's still part of the block. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Councillor Banerjee.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this report. It's again, quite detailed. I found it very interesting. Just focusing on page 50 of my report and the paragraph that outlines the compulsory purchase order process. From my experience, this can be a quite sensitive subject. Can you shed a bit more light on how this was completed? I do appreciate it was back in March, but just any light that you can shed on this and a bit more information, and how the sort of residents, what the outcome was without going to specifics, that would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, the compulsory purchase order, as you said, has been completed. Now, it was started quite early, so notices were served, and we have to complete by March of this year with those notices, and they were followed through the legal process. I suppose some people, yes, will always try and push back to see can they hold out for something better, but we were able to complete it all with minimal issues. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, as I say, the general direction of travel is good, and again, I'm particularly interested in the extent and the response consultation with residents, which is very, very helpful. And inevitably, it was helpful to you, to the council, to know what people thought about it, and it's progressing very well. Councillor Puncher.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see this development, actually, and for the amount of housing that it is providing. I just wanted to ask you how the council is ensuring that Higgins delivers the agreed social value commitments, and if not, what penalties are there going to be in place for them?
It is something that is being monitored, and we do monitor it regularly. It does come up at our monthly site meetings as well to see what they have. They have a resident liaison officer on site, and we do insist that we don't get to a stage where nothing is happening. We do push that Higgins are doing something regularly and diligently throughout the project. There's been quite a number of events that have been organised, I suppose, by Higgins in liaison with council officers, and we, as the next phases start on site, we'll be insisting that carries on. It has worked quite well so far, so we're hoping that we won't have to start insisting or looking at ways of forcing it to be done. We hope that the partnership will remain there for the remainder of the project.
All right, thank you. We'll move on. That's good news, and we'll keep that under review, and no doubt you'll come back and tell us more about it, and maybe we'll even do a a repeat performance of our visit to the leisure centre and come and have a look at the development. All right, thank you. Agenda item 8. Now, this was a question really that we raised previously about council tax banding and what happens when properties undergo significant development, and really this paper is an answer to that, and we're grateful to officers for that answer, because we were concerned that there may be missed opportunities for reassessment of banding where there had been very significant improvement to housing, and that, to make sure that the system for catching up on those was sufficiently robust. So unless any of the officers want to sort of pitch in and say anything further about that, that really answers to a large extent what we were asking about, and also to assure us that that was being monitored.
I'll just be very quick. Two little things. I mean, I've looked into the law relating to this, and there's sections within Local Government Finance Act and regulations that cover this. But I also spoke to one of my colleagues who specialises in valuation and working with the Valuation Office, and she assured me they do get changes to council tax bands sent through to them.
Yeah.
Notified to them. Thank you.
No, that's good. Thank you, and I'm glad. I'm grateful for you being here. It was really a kind of a general concern that we had, that because there is so much building going on, to make sure that there was, because what you say in the report and what is said in the report is that some types of development don't attract greater banding, and some would. And that inevitably there's a relationship between planning applications and the potential for assessment. So it's good to know that that's being looked at. Thank you. So we move on, unless anybody's got any questions on that. No? All right, thank you. We'll move on then to two items, 9 and 10. Feedback from the committee's visit to the Platinum Jubilee Leisure Centre. Councillor Bennett and I had the unmitigated delight of going to the centre and seeing it before it's entirely finished. But I have to say, it really is quite an undertaking. And one of the things that we got, and Anisha came with us as well, one of the things that we got from discussing it with officers who were on site, of course, was the journey that had been taken in terms of that development. That in the end, council officers became the project managers essentially, and also the main contractor, and to have ended up, even though it's not finished, with 3 pools and climbing walls, and I mean, even unfinished, it looked for all the world like a private club. And we were full of praise with the people on site, and would like to make that praise public here, because it really is a spectacular looking leisure centre, and we wish them all the great luck. Not that they'll need it for hundreds and hundreds of people joining up or going along and using it. The facilities are really, really very, very good, and we were very impressed with I'm looking at Anisha, but you don't want to say anything. The facilities really were very, very good, and the general standard of the building was very good as well. Meticulous attention being taken even to things like brickwork patterns and things like that, and just the look and the layout and the flow of the place. But not just for leisure, also there are other things there as well that residents can take advantage of. I don't know if Councillor Bennett wants to add anything.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've said it all. Just to say a very big thank you to Michael for taking a couple of hours out of his day to put us in 5-point PPE and take us around. But I was really impressed. I think that if you think of local authority leisure facilities, you have an image in your head of what that would be. Particularly go back to the 80s and the 90s, it was a very kind of standard build. This is on par with a Nuffield or a David Lloyd in terms of construction. And yeah, the facilities, the 2 gym floors, the badminton, the sort of indoor ball court, the 3 pools, the sauna, the steam, climbing wall, which we learned was a for Hillingdon was all really good, and the fact that it's opening hopefully very soon, I won't say a month or a day, but was really impressive. So thank you, Michael.
It was very impressive when you told us that there was a football pitch on the roof. We were a little worried, but then we saw it was all covered in, so that was all right. And we did make a plea that the flume should be allowed to be used by adults, but I suspect it won't be. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. Under the chairmanship of Councillor Bridges, the Resident Services Select Committee went in advance of this Select Committee, and I think the one thing I learned that I think is obviously relevant to both, but possibly more relevant to this, was the great way that the council took on the project following the collapse of the Buckingham Group construction company, and I actually think it is not to commend the people that did that, and to you and your team, Michael, that have done that, because that's no easy task. When those things happen, they get very complicated, but they've picked up the reins there, and often if people hear that a council has taken over a construction project, it will send shivers down the spine, but a good job has been done, and I just wanted to, from this Select Committee's perspective, that was worth observing.
Thank you. So, Michael, you can take our heartfelt thanks to your team and indeed to you, of course. It's a really spectacular project, and we really look forward to seeing it when it's all complete.
Thank you, and I'll pass it on to the team as well. The thanks. Thank you.
All right. So that was item 9. Item 10, verbal update on the committee's review into maximising council spaces. So, for those who haven't been involved or who are subbing tonight, this has been a fairly, well, not that long, but a longish term project that we've been very, very keen on. From seeing this as something, as we believed it to be, being a sort of easy win, it's taken some little time. So what we decided to do was, and you'll all have received this letter, I think, earlier on this afternoon, is to write to the Cabinet members responsible and to give them a bit of an update, and also a series of key issues that we identified so far, so that both this committee and at Cabinet level it can be pushed forward. So I'm not going to read the whole letter, but the key issues identified were no central, and we knew this, and we've been asking for this for some time, and everybody seems to agree it's a good idea, so that should mean it should get going. But no centralised register of hireable spaces, making it difficult to promote and manage assets effectively, which is really important. Fragmented booking systems and lack of integration with finance processes, limiting accurate income tracking. Inconsistent pricing and terms, reducing transparency and commercial competitiveness, and underused or poorly maintained spaces where opportunities to repurpose or optimise are being missed. And we also talked about A, Bs and Cs for various buildings or spaces and so forth. So A's being ready to go in and ready to capitalise in whatever way, B's being probably would be, but maybe metaphorically need a lick of paint, and C's too awful, get rid of. And then we've made some suggested interim steps for Cabinet members' consideration, and they're set out in the letter, principally, I would say, cross-council working group, establish that, of officers to coordinate the work corporately, so that we've got a much better idea of what we've got and what we're doing with it. Comprehensive audit, look at a unified booking approach, agree standardisation of fees and charges, and to develop essentially a public-facing catalogue and light-touch marketing. So we thought the best way to go forward would be to sort of push it in that way and give those pointers to the Cabinet members, and we'll follow up with the response from them to that, because it does seem to us that it will make the actual thing a lot quicker. Any comments on that? All right, good. So that's that one. Right, number 11, forward plan. Anything you want to say about that? just a note really, what's on the forward plan, and then item number 12, work programme. Anything you want to... Oh, anybody want to... Sorry? Yeah. Yes, as far as the work programme is concerned, one thing that has already been mentioned by Matthew earlier is about new ways of looking at inbound debt, and we'll look at that in January as a sort of starting point for a longer and more detailed review. It's something that we're very interested in. It's something I know that's being worked on. It's something that we need to follow up. So that will be a good topic to continue with in the new year. So, and I did brush over them, the forward plan and the work programme, but I mean, they're all set out there, and if everyone's happy with that, we can leave it at that. All right, unless there's anything else, I will close the meeting. Thank you.